it might seem like Tesla has been doing a lot for other automakers lately. They're opening up their network. NACS is being adopted along the EV industry, and we're just waiting to see who comes next. But today we have Kyle and his dad, Spec Dave, on because Kyle thinks that Tesla needs to do a little bit more for other automakers. So Kyle, what are we talking about? What does Tesla need to do to meet others where they're at?
Well, to put it simply, I think Tesla's infrastructure needs to support 1,000 volt operation.
Why?
Okay, well, you got an hour. First of all, if you guys haven't listened to the previous podcast that the three of us just did, we just posted an episode probably the day before this one goes live, talking about what's different with version 4 superchargers, how there really is no difference in the charging hardware, at least at this point, especially for the already open stations in Europe and Asia, where they're still capped at 500 volts output voltage. And with the US stations seemingly having no change, at least from the outside before they're turned on, it also seems like Tesla is not yet ready to go high voltage with their charging infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a real problem. I think it's a huge issue. And I think it's one of the reasons, honestly, we haven't seen Volkswagen Group or Lucid go with the North American charging standard yet.
Really? So you think that's what's standing in their way, even though a lot of automakers, they're announcing their next plans, but they're saying, 2025. Right now, we're still in the CCS world, but we'll go there soon, because couldn't these automakers say, yeah, we'll say yes now, but then wait what will happen in the future? Or do you think they're waiting for some solid agreements from Tesla or something?
Well, I think going NACS is twofold. First of all, there's two main benefits to go North American charging standard natively on your vehicle. The first is, of course, access to the much better, much more reliable Tesla Supercharger network. We've done countless videos, countless comparisons on the CCS existing infrastructure versus Tesla's infrastructure. No question Tesla's is better from a reliability standpoint. The second benefit going North American charging standard is everyone's already done it. It is now the new standard for North America. You're going to have third party, not Tesla, I'm talking ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, Greenlots, so-and-so. Francie's out, but we'll keep talking. You'll have so many different ChargePoint operators going NACS, which we've already had commitments from them that they're going to be natively compatible with those vehicles. So not only are you gaining access to the Tesla Supercharger network, you will also continue to gain access to existing infrastructure, and the port's nicer. Like, it's just a simple benefit. It's nicer to plug in than the CCS handle. That's not the reason anyone is switching. Everyone is switching to get access to the Supercharger network, but there's almost no downsides except for high voltage cars. We're talking, what are those vehicles? First of all, we're talking Hyundai, Kia, Genesis. Their eGMP platform currently is anywhere between 650 and 800 volts. Porsche Taycan, Audi e-tron GT. What else is out there? Of course, Lucid vehicles. And we could put Hummer EV, Silverado EV, GMC Sierra in these categories, the double stacked Ultium pack vehicles, the big ones, Escalade IQ. But those are a little bit of a different case, and maybe we'll talk about that later on in this video. So the reason Tesla needs to support 1,000 volts is of this guy right here, because you pulled up to a version 3 supercharger in your Lucid with a Magic Dock in Brewster, New York. And can you share your experience with that?
Yeah, and I was all excited about it because, I know that a V3 can put out 250 kilowatts. I know that me charging my Lucid Grand Touring, which is the larger battery pack, 112 kilowatt hour battery pack, that is a 924 volt car at fully charged. You saw, I think, 351 peak. The most I ever saw at any Electrify America was 292 peak, and it
still good.
Still good. I mean, it wasn't the greatest charging curve in the world, but it was decent. Okay, so here I am pulling up to a V3 that puts out 250. We all know that. And what do I pull? 46 kilowatts. Right?
That's a thumbs up. It needs to be a thumbs down.
Yeah, double thumbs down. So, I mean, okay, that's worse than a 350 nerfed at 50 at EA.
Yes.
So why?
Well, If you watch the previous episode, we explain the actual mechanical or electromechanical process that goes through here. Tesla supercharging equipment that's installed today is only capable of outputting maximum 500 volts. When you charge an electric vehicle with DC charging, the charger has to pretty much match the battery pack, because what you're doing is you're removing the onboard charger's job of voltage adjustment and converting from AC to DC. So in order all of what we call off-board conversion of power, so you have a charger that you're plugging into those big cabinets in the back, what they're doing is taking AC from the grid, converting it to DC, and matching the voltage to your car's battery pack. So let's say you're at 800 volts in a Lucid, pretty low charge. Let's say 30%, around 800 volts in that car, something like that. The charger is going to have to go, I'm going to match 800 volts, go slightly above that, and then dump current in. And that's going to basically match the pack and charge the vehicle. When you have an 800 volt pack and the Tesla supercharger can only get to 500 volts, you can't put any more in there because you're already way the heck up there at 800 volts. So what the Lucid has to do is to take the energy from the supercharger at 400, 500 volts, route it to an in-car booster, which then can juice the voltage up to match the battery pack and actually charge. The thing is, that component of the Lucid is only limited to just under 50 kilowatts in that scenario. So that's the limitation of the charging process. And each car does it differently.
Right. And even within Lucid, to be fair, like a Pure or a Touring with the smaller battery is not as a high voltage. So at a 30% state of charge, it's going to be requiring less voltage, right? So the difference in that, so a Grand Touring, you're going to have a much bigger not degradation, but you're not going to charge as fast as a Grand Touring.
No difference.
No difference?
No difference. Your booster is the same capacity. Yeah, it's a power capacity.
Well, okay. I've read things on blogs that's wrong then.
Yeah, you're only talking about a few kilowatt difference at most.
I see.
Yeah, it's roughly just under 50 kilowatts for all of them.
I see.
Yeah. There are scenarios, like especially with Chinese charging infrastructure, where the Pure, smaller battery, lower voltage works better with their infrastructure, because some of their chargers don't go above like 850 volts or something weird, unlike ours. We don't need to get into all of that. We need to get into why Tesla needs to support 1,000 volts. And it is to basically make sure that the user, the charger rolling up to now a public charging station, gets the nameplate rated speed, because you want to avoid the confusion to a consumer. When you roll up to a 250 kilowatt charger in your Lucid, you expect 250 kilowatts. You don't want to have to think that charger is limited to 500 amps and my booster can only do 50 kilowatts and I don't want to be stuck there. So let me go to the other 150 kilowatt Electrify America station and get more power than the Tesla. This just confuses people.
Yeah.
And Lucid's not the only car that suffers from this. Hyundai, Kia, Genesis vehicles do as well.
Right.
We talked about how Lucid uses an off-board booster, the Wonder Box they call it. The Hyundai, Kia, Genesis vehicles use the rear motor's inverter.
Yeah.
And that can be anywhere between, let's just say about 80 kilowatts to 120 kilowatts we've seen. Genesis G80 is notorious for doing 120 kilowatt boosting.
Yeah, I saw about 105 in Kathy's GV60.
In the GV60 105. Yeah, that's great. I also recently did it with an EV6 and only got 40 kilowatts. So it is a little buggy and a little bit weird, for sure. And then the Taycan has a similar thing. But rather than maybe not get so nerdy, Taycan basically splits the pack voltage in half. And then you actually, can double the voltage into the car. The Lucid actually says, give me the maximum voltage and current you can from the charger at that voltage, and then it'll go up.
Can I come to the defense of Tesla for a moment?
Sure, of course.
All right. So if I'm Tesla and I realize there's all these manufacturers knocking on my door for the solution of being able to charge my customers' cars, okay, I am not going to focus on the fringe cases of a Lucid, an EGMP, or Porsche. I'm going to go after the mass. What percentage of cars on the road today are higher voltage that are sold?
So small.
Okay.
I don't think we have the numbers.
If you're Tesla and we're around a board table and we say, all right, we are going to be the facilitators to empower the massive amount of EVs that are on the road today to be able to charge their cars better than what they get with the current CCS environment, at least in the United States we're talking about here, right? So, and so I think that from a sequencing standpoint, the decision of Tesla to to perhaps not put the chargers at 1,000 volts right now, but to solve the problem of having longer cables and credit card payments with the V4 dispensers, which are much more elegant, the taller units and all of that. It seems to me that that's a prudent sequencing decision, and then let the fringe cases come later.
Yeah, I totally don't disagree with you at all. The easiest thing to do is accept, I don't know what the number is, 85, 90, 95% of existing electric vehicles on the market to charge natively and quickly on their infrastructure. The problem is, of course, with these higher voltage cars not being able to interface perfectly. And we talked about why some of them, and honestly, all of them can't match high power on Tesla Superchargers. It's because when these cars were designed, there was no charging infrastructure like Tesla. There was no high current, low voltage charging infrastructure. The pretty much the fastest charger in our market ever installed to be limited to 500 volts was a 50 kilowatt charger. So most of these boosters are based around 50 kilowatts maximum. Taycan came standard with a 50 kilowatt booster. It had an optional 150 kilowatt booster, which I was like, why would anyone get that? There's no charger that you need that for. Now I'm looking back on all those recommendations, and it's like everyone who got a Taycan should have got the 150 kilowatt booster. Yeah, well, sure.
Luck.
Yeah, luck. Maybe. I don't know.
Right?
There were some cases in Europe where they needed these higher power boosters. So Porsche obviously designed the car. It was a global product,
right? And
it worked pretty well for that. Also for Japan with CHAdeMO chargers. We don't need to get into the craziness of it, but yes, Taycan and every electric car ships with CHAdeMO to Japan, which is wild. So so it comes down to, does Tesla need to support 1,000 volts, or do the other cars need to retrofit higher capacity boosters? What's your opinion? Keep in mind the Cybertruck's going to be 800 volts.
Okay, so if that's the case, then Tesla better damn well get putting 1,000 volts into their V4s as fast as possible, because people are going to be pissed off.
Well, are they?
Yes.
Or are they going to configure the Cybertruck to charge nicely at voltage cap chargers?
Well, if you're getting the Cybertruck, don't you want the infrastructure that is, coming hand in hand with it to be the best pairing?
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think the Cybertruck's going to split pack to 400 volts.
But the point is that if Tesla's motivation to put 1,000 volt chargers out there with V4 dispensers is the Cybertruck, then that's the right decision, because they're vertically integrated with that product. But I don't see, from a sequencing standpoint, the motivation there for Tesla to support other manufacturers of vehicles that have chosen to put higher voltages in their cars. So I would say, at least not yet, because there's a massive trade that has to happen right now, which is NACS, Tesla, coming to the rescue of a failed charging infrastructure, that being CCS here in the States, and delivering that to the massive amount of cars, 90% of the cars that are on the road today. That's job number one. That's what I think they need to do, and I think it is right. And in the case of Genesis and Kia, the EGMP platform cars, the fact that you can pull maybe 105, 120, that's okay, right?
And they agree, by the way, because they've signed up with NACS already.
Right, no, I know that, but I'll take that as an owner of an EGMP platform car. The problem is that Lucid got messed up in not building having the foresight and having such a high voltage car that they can't justifiably join NACS now, because the charging experience that they would give their customers would be so horrendous, which is what I've experienced at Magic Dock. But again, I get back to what I said in the other podcast. I understand that, but don't leave us in the dark. Communicate that out. Educate people. We're not stupid. Tell us why you're not joining NACS.
So you're fine with the reasoning, but you really want them to just be forthright with it.
These guys are so smart at Lucid, the engineers, in my opinion, that had they known that this is going to be the state, they would have changed the decisions they made in the hardware that goes into the Wonderbox. But that decision was probably made 5 years ago.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you can't pivot as fast as the way the charging infrastructure has accelerated in terms of evolvement over the last 2 years. And now the decision to be able to open up NACS to all the cars. So they've been caught they've been caught a little bit, in a tough spot.
Not in a little tough spot, a huge tough spot.
It's a huge tough spot. And look, the answer is not just charge your home and charge your car on a level 2 at home and have a tether.
Yes, do that as much as possible.
Yes, no, I get that.
Yeah.
But look, I'm not even going to get into it.
Yeah, let's not get into this isn't about Lucid specifically.
Right.
This is all about high voltage cars.
Right.
And my opinion differs from yours. I think if you're going to create an open, accessible, and equitable charging network for all EV drivers, that includes all EV drivers between the voltage of, 250 volts and 1,000 volts.
Yeah, but Kyle, they're going to do that. They're going to do that, but the sequencing of that to deliver a proper business model, you can't do it all today.
Why can't Tesla communicate that?
That's a fair point.
Why can't Tesla say, at this time, we'll be ready to either two things Tesla can do, right? And there's two expectations from us. The first is, are they able, and we did a whole podcast on this, are they able to reconfigure version 3 chargers to support 1,000 volts? Because already, we explained in the last podcast too, there's a DC link between two different or multiple chargers at V3 sites, right? You have one 360 kilowatt cabinet, you have another 360 kilowatt cabinet. They can share power between them to site level load shift. That power sharing on that DC bus is already at over 800 volt DC. So there are components of the version 3 charging infrastructure that operates above 800 volts. How hard would it be for them to just reconfigure the output voltage up to 1,000 volts? I think not that hard.
Are the liquid cooled cables in the V3s capable of handling that kind of power?
Great question. I don't think anyone knows. Because in Europe they are.
The cables on the V4s are different, correct?
The cables on the V4
you were there,
are different.
You saw it, right?
Yeah, but also version 3 dispensers in Europe with the CCS cable are 1,000 volt rated, even though the chargers can only do 500 volts.
So have you noted, is there a difference between a V3 CCS Tesla cable in Europe than a V3 NACS dispenser cable here in the States, thickness wise?
No thickness. It seems like the same cable, just with a different end, but they have a different nameplate rating.
I see.
Which is pretty interesting.
So they maybe use a different way to cool it as well.
No, I think it's the same cooling logic. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure what constitutes that particular rating, but there is 1,000. So like, even if the cable is different, who cares? That's cheap. Tesla could just roll up to a V3 site. They can reconfigure the output bus. They can slap new cables on it, and boom, you can charge any car at 250 kilowatts, regardless of the voltage or more.
Magic Dock took less than a day.
Right. Magic Docks takes them a few hours. This is the same process. New cable, slap it on, boom, done.
Yeah.
Are they going to do that? Or, sorry, Francie, or are they just going to say only version 4 infrastructure?
Wait, Francie's still with us?
Yeah, Francie's still here. Sorry. But are they going to retrofit V3, which it sounds, originally I was very confident they would do this.
That, yeah.
I'm kind of like, maybe they're not, because I've talked to also some people in the industry and they're like, we're kind of not hearing that that's possible. And then, or are they just going to wait for version 4 chargers to be 800 to 1,000 volt? And is that going to happen quick enough for a large automaker like Lucid to say, hey, let's go with Tesla, or others as well, but to go, and just wait for those chargers? I think the answer is, especially for Lucid, they have to wait, but I think they need to communicate that. And I think it's on Tesla as well to get 1,000 volt support as soon as possible. If you're creating an open network that's better than everyone, it has to operate at all voltage levels.
But they got to do what's best for the overall industry and the group from a sequencing standpoint. And I actually agree. Two things. Tesla is doing it the right way from a sequencing standpoint. That's number one. And number two, they should communicate that better, just like Lucid should communicate it better.
Everyone just needs to talk.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
I think that's the most frustrating part of this industry, is that if there was really a shared mission to like go electric, then there would be way more communication between all the moving parts. And it is a bit of an absurdity. And I think it's a huge thing that's standing in the way of EV adoption, is that we can get into the details of this and try to understand and also communicate it and educate people. But the general public is just seeing a tumultuous time in this industry. And I do think that, possibly, right, V4 could be coming out with this architecture, right, and open it up. Why isn't it communicated? And why isn't there more collaboration?
We're pretty confident that version 4 will be 1,000 volts. I think that's already been communicated. The problem is we don't know what the heck they're installing in the ground. We think it's just version 3s with version 4 dispensers in North America. It is in Europe, at least. There's no difference between a V3 and a V4 in Europe. In the US, I don't think anyone's seen the nameplate ratings, but we're 99% sure they're the same as well. So why is Tesla branding V4 now as not being, as old hardware that's not 1,000 volt capable? Or is it going to be reconfigured like we talk about? And V4s will use V3 hardware that can operate it up to 1,000 volts. So many questions that people just need to talk about. And I think if automakers had more clarity, if Stellantis, if Volkswagen Group, if Lucid and others had more clarity into when 1,000 volt capability will happen, how it's going to happen, how many stations there will be to natively charge their vehicles without the need of boosting technology, I think we would see more NACS announcements from the remainder.
I think VW not announcing has nothing to do with 1,000 volt or not. It has everything to do with the fact that they own EA.
But EA is already committed to NACS.
It's just, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, I think, yes, it's no surprise Volkswagen's last.
Right.
But they want to switch. I know a lot of people inside Volkswagen, they're working really hard to get NACS.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's working on it, right? I mean,
it is the standard. You have no choice at this point. You have to put NACS on your car. So it's just a matter of when.
Figuring it out, announcing it, and making the plan.
But no question, we give Tesla a lot of praise at Out of Spec and on this podcast because they do some incredible things, but not everything is perfect. And I think this whole 1,000 volt situation has screwed up some parts of the industry. And all I wanted to do was bring awareness to it. And my opinion is, regardless, Tesla needs to offer 1,000 volt support as soon as possible, again, to make a fair, open network that's truly public and can charge all EVs.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear that, and then I can hear your argument, Dave, as well, where that there is a sequence of events that has to happen, of course, and then figuring out the best, most effective one is part of that business plan as well.
Hey, Rafiki.
He's just pushing his head into me. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting conversation, putting a little bit of pressure on Tesla, which is fun. And yeah, if they're going to open up the network, it has to be considered, of course, and more collaboration in general is always a takeaway from these conversations. So yeah, thanks you two for hopping on and really appreciate it. Let us know in the comments what you think about what Tesla should do next. Do you agree with Kyle? Do you think that there's a bit of an approach that maybe we haven't considered here? Let us know in the comments. If you're enjoying these conversations, either when we're getting into the nitty gritty or looking at the big picture, let us know. Like, subscribe if you've tuned in. We really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you too for tuning in. I love the family time.
That's right. Tons of fun. Thanks, Francie.
Take care, everybody.
We'll see y'all next time on the Out of Spec podcast.